Imagine for a second that you are a world leader,
Okay.
but not just any leader. You are a leader who is currently under siege.
A very stressful morning.
Right. You wake up, you look out the window of your palace in Jerusalem, and you don't see a sunrise. You just see smoke. You see armies. It's actually two distinct nations, Israel and Aram. They've teamed up, and they are literally banging on your front door.
It is a moment of absolute pure panic.
Exactly. Your dynasty is on the line. Your actual life is on the line, and you are faced with this binary choice.
Yeah.
Do you trust in a quiet, sort of invisible promise of protection from God? Or do you pick up the phone and call the biggest, scariest bully on the block to come save you?
Which would be the Assyrian Empire. It sounds like a geopolitical thriller, really, but it's actually one of the most profound psychological case studies we have from the ancient world.
And that is exactly what we are diving into today. We are looking at a fantastic stack of sources centered entirely on King Ahaz. We're talking about the historical accounts from 2 Kings 16, 2 Chronicles 28, and that really famous narrative in Isaiah 7.
Yeah, all brought together in our source material today.
Yes, the text is titled The Burden of Ahaz, Faith, Compromise, and the Immanuel Prophecy.
What's so fascinating here is that, while this is ancient history, we're talking mid-8th century BC, the core tension is completely timeless.
Completely.
It is entirely about fear, specifically what fear does to a leader's decision-making process.
It really is a masterclass on the psychology of compromise, because we're going to unpack how a leader's decision to choose security or, well, what looked like security over his faith actually led to this massive cascade of cultural and spiritual shifts.
A total domino effect.
Yeah, it starts with one panic attack and ends with a completely different religion.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We really want to understand that cascade. Because looking at the sources, Ahaz isn't just painted as a cartoon villain in a story.
No, not at all.
He's a human being backed into a corner. And his reaction to that intense pressure is, frankly, disturbingly relatable.
It really is. So let's set the stage with some high-resolution context, because war is a generic term, but this was a very specific conflict.
The Syro-Ephraimite War.
Right. So break that down for us.
Okay, so you have the kingdom of Israel to the north and the kingdom of Aram to the northeast.
Right.
And they are both terrified of the rising Assyrian Empire. So they form a coalition. It's a suicide pact, really.
Yeah, a desperate move.
Very desperate. And they want Judah, which is Ahaz's kingdom in the south, they want Judah to join them.
And Ahaz says no. He wants to just stay neutral.
Exactly. So Israel and Aram decide, fine, if you won't join us, we will conquer you, kill you, and put a puppet king on your throne who will do exactly what we say.
Wow.
So this wasn't just a border dispute. This was an existential threat to the entire line of David.
And the sources paint this really vivid picture of Ahaz's mental state at this moment. There's this one line in Isaiah that says, his heart shook as the trees of the forest shake with the wind.
It's such a visceral image.
It is.
He's trembling. He's probably not sleeping. He is looking at the math, and the math says he is dead.
Yeah.
He's completely outnumbered and outgunned.
And this is where the story gets really cinematic. Ahaz is out inspecting the water supply.
The conduit of the upper pool.
Right. He's preparing for a long siege, and he gets interrupted. The prophet Isaiah just walks right onto the scene.
And Isaiah isn't there to discuss water levels. He is there with a message from God. And the message is jarringly calm compared to Ahaz's total panic.
Yeah, God refers to these two terrifying enemy kings as two smoldering stumps of firebrands.
Which is just a fantastic insult.
I love that insult so much. Don't be afraid of those two burnt-out sticks. It's a total reframing of reality.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
God is essentially saying, you see a raging inferno, but I just see smoke and ash. Their time is already over. Do not fear. And here is the divine counteroffer. Option A. Stand firm in your faith. Trust that God has promised to preserve your kingdom and do nothing. Just trust.
Which, to be fair to Ahaz, is incredibly hard to do when people are literally sharpening swords outside your city walls.
Oh, absolutely.
Doing nothing in that moment feels exactly like suicide.
It contradicts every basic survival instinct we have as humans.
Yeah.
But then there's option B. Ahaz has his own plan. He knows there's a bigger power out there.
Tiglath-Pileser III.
The king of Assyria.
This guy was an absolute monster in the history books. He completely revolutionized the Assyrian military.
He created the first professional standing army in history.
Yeah.
He was ruthless, efficient, and rapidly expanding.
So Ahaz is thinking, if I can just get this guy on my side, he can crush Israel and Aram for me.
Exactly. But there's a massive cost. You don't just ask Assyria for help. You submit to them. You become a vassal state.
So the choice isn't just faith versus fear. It's invisible protection versus tangible power. And the source material really digs into this. Why is it that the tangible power always seems so much more reasonable?
Because it's measurable.
Yeah.
You can count Assyrian chariots. You can't count divine promises. And the sources highlight this tension perfectly. Ahaz is a pragmatist at heart.
He's looking at the spreadsheet.
He is. He looks at the invisible God and the highly visible empire, and he decides that the empire is the safer bet. He chooses the theology of realpolitik.
But he hasn't actually made the call yet in the text, or at least the text presents it as this active moment of decision.
Right.
And this leads to one of the most tense dialogues anywhere in the Bible. In Isaiah 7, God actually doubles down. He offers Ahaz a sign.
This is such a crucial moment. God, speaking through Isaiah, basically says, okay, you're struggling to believe this. I get it. Ask for a sign. Anything at all. Deep as Sheol or high as heaven, I will prove it to you.
That is a literal blank check.
Completely.
I mean, who turns that down? You could say, make the sun stop or split the earth. But Ahaz does turn it down.
He does.
And what he says sounds, well, on the surface, it sounds really holy. He says, I will not ask, and I will not put the Lord to the test.
Yeah, if you just read that in isolation, or if you were just a bystander listening in on the conversation, you'd think, wow, what a deeply pious guy.
Yeah, very respectful.
He's actually quoting scripture right there. He's referencing Deuteronomy 6.16.
You shall not put the Lord your God to the test. So he's quoting the Bible back to the prophet.
Exactly. But the expert analysis in our source material deconstructs this rhetoric brutally. It asks a really important question. Is there a difference between sincerely asking for a sign when you are invited to and testing God?
And I assume the answer is a resounding yes.
A huge difference.
Sure.
Testing God in the Deuteronomy context is all about demanding that God prove himself on your terms because you doubt him. It's an act of rebellion.
Right.
But here, God issued the invitation. When the creator of the universe says, ask me, and you say, no, that would be wrong, you aren't being pious. You are being obstinate.
So it's just a mask. He is using religion to dodge a relationship.
That is perfectly put. Because think about it. If he asks for a sign and the sign actually happens, he is obligated to trust God.
He loses his excuse to call Assyria.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He doesn't want the sign because he has already made up his mind. He has probably already written the letter Tiglath-Pileser. He is shielding his total lack of faith with highly religious language.
That is such a common maneuver, even today.
Oh, yeah.
Using spiritual language to justify a lack of actual faith. Like saying, I'm just being prudent, or I don't want to presume upon God, when really, we just want to control the outcome ourselves.
And Isaiah sees right through it instantly. The sources point out this devastating linguistic shift right here that totally exposes Ahaz's heart.
Oh, I caught this in the notes. This is where the pronouns change, right?
Yes. So when Isaiah first approaches Ahaz, he says, ask a sign of the Lord your God. He uses the possessive your.
Okay.
He is affirming Ahaz's covenant standing. He's saying, he is still your God.
Your God. Got it.
But after Ahaz gives that fake pious refusal, I will not put the Lord to the test. Isaiah's response completely changes. He says, is it too little for you to weary men, that you weary my God also?
Whoa. He takes the, you're right back. It becomes my God.
It is a subtle but absolutely brutal indictment. The implication there is that Ahaz has effectively disowned the relationship.
Wow.
By refusing to trust, by actively refusing the sign, he has stepped completely outside of that covenant. God is still Isaiah's God, my God. But the text strongly suggests he is no longer recognized as Ahaz's God.
That is incredibly heavy. It shows that the spiritual condition of the leader had totally fractured. He's just a politician now, operating entirely on his own steam.
And that fracture is the direct context for one of the most famous prophecies in all of history, which appears right here in this exact narrative, the Immanuel prophecy.
Right. The virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Immanuel. And now, usually when people hear that phrase, they jump straight to the New Testament and Christmas carols.
Right, naturally.
But our source material really wants us to pump the brakes and look at the immediate context.
Correct. We have to remember, Isaiah wasn't just talking over Ahaz's head to a future audience centuries later. He was talking directly to Ahaz right there in the middle of a military crisis. He was giving him a timeline.
So what did Immanuel mean for Ahaz in the 8th century BC?
It was a timing mechanism. Isaiah is saying a child is going to be born. And before that kid is old enough to eat solid food, before he's basically a toddler, These two kings that you are so terrified of will be completely gone.
So it was a countdown clock. Just hold on for a couple of years and this entire problem disappears.
Exactly. But the name itself is the kicker. Immanuel, God with us. For the faithful, that name is a profound promise of comfort. But for Ahaz, it was a massive irony.
Because he was actively running away from God being with him.
Right. God is with us was the exact reality he was rejecting. It was a sign of the deliverance that could have been his if he just had faith. Instead, he chose Assyria with us. It just emphasized the tragedy of his choice. The assurance was right there for the taking, but Ahaz was too busy looking at the Assyrian army to even notice.
And the really tragic part is the Assyria plan actually worked.
Sort of.
Yeah, sort of, in the short term.
In the short term, yes.
Yeah.
And this is what makes the temptation so sticky for leaders. Ahaz sends the tribute. He empties out the royal treasuries, sends all the gold to Tiglath-Pileser. And the Assyrians march in, they crush Damascus, they kill King Rezin, and they scatter Israel. The threat is totally neutralized.
So Ahaz looks like a political genius.
He survived.
He survived, but the bill always comes due. And this moves us to the next major section of the sources, the altar of Damascus. This moves our timeline forward a bit to 2 Kings 16.
Right, so war is over, and Ahaz has to take a trip to Damascus. But not as a conqueror. He's going to pay homage to his new boss, Tiglath-Pileser. He has to go kiss the ring.
And while he is there, probably touring the ruins of the very city that used to threaten him, something catches his eye. He sees an altar.
A pagan altar used for worshiping the gods of the region.
And he doesn't just look at it. The text points out that he has captivated by it. He's sketched it out, or had someone sketch it, and sent highly detailed blueprints back to Urijah the priest in Jerusalem, and basically said, build me this.
Just think about the absurdity of that for a second. He's the king of Judah. He has the Temple of Solomon, literally the architectural wonder of the ancient world, designed according to divine instruction.
Right.
And he sees a foreign pagan altar and thinks, you know what, I want that one instead.
It's like walking into the Louvre and saying, you know what would look really good right here? A cheap neon sign.
That's exactly it.
So why did he do it? The source material asks this really probing question. Why is it so tempting to blend worship with the practices of the surrounding culture? Was it just aesthetics? Did he just think it was prettier?
I mean, it might have been aesthetically pleasing, sure, but if we connect this to the bigger geopolitical picture, it is entirely about power. Ahaz was deeply impressed by Assyria's military might. In the ancient world, if a nation conquered you, or if they were just the dominant superpower of the day, it was universally assumed that their gods were stronger than your gods.
So by copying their altar, he is trying to tap into their success.
Exactly. It is a might makes right theology. He trusted the foreign king for safety, so now he naturally begins adopting the foreign culture's religious practices.
Well,
It's a very slippery sliding slope of syncretism.
syncretism, that's the blending of beliefs, right?
Yes, and this is a crucial distinction to make. Ahaz didn't come back to Jerusalem and say, I am now an Assyrian pagan, close the doors to Yahweh.
Right. He didn't shut down the temple.
No, he brought the pagan altar into the temple of the Lord.
He just remodeled.
He remodeled. He actually moved the traditional bronze altar,
Yeah.
the one ordained by God's law, shoved it off to the north side. He treated it like spare furniture. And he put this new altar Damascus right center stage. He even started offering the daily sacrifices on the copycat altar.
That is so much more dangerous than outright rejection. Because it looks like you are still religious. It looks like you're still doing the right things, but the core has been completely swapped out.
Exactly.
He kept the God label on the outside, but he was running Empire software on the inside.
Precisely. And notice this detail. The priest, Urijah, just went right along with it.
He just built it.
He just built it. The religious establishment had completely lost its backbone. They built a religion that looked successful and powerful, just like the Assyrians, but it was spiritually hollow.
It's a sliding scale. It started with, I just need a little help with this war. And it ended with, I am redesigning the entire worship of God to match the culture that now owns me.
And once that door was opened, he just kept going. He kept stripping the temple. The sources note he cut up the stands, he removed the bronze basin, he systematically dismantled the distinctiveness of his faith just to pay for his political safety.
Which brings us right to you, the listener, because we aren't kings of Judah, obviously, and we aren't building bronze altars in our backyards. But the source material makes a really hard pivot here to modern application, it asks. What are the characteristics of modern idols?
And this is where we have to define idol not as a golden statue, but as a function. The source prompts us to consider things that function as gods in people's lives, meaning sources of ultimate security, worth, or significance.
So going back to Ahaz for a second, his idol was effectively security or maybe political power.
Right, he was completely willing to sacrifice his spiritual integrity for physical safety. For us today, a modern idol is really anything we trust more than we trust our core principles or our faith to get us through a crisis.
Okay, that makes sense.
It could be financial accumulation, it could be career status, it could even be a political ideology.
And what about the blending part? How do we see that altar of Damascus dynamic playing out today? That specific act of bringing the foreign, powerful thing into the sacred space.
Well, just think about Ahaz's logic. The Assyrians are winning, so I will do what they do. Today, we see this whenever people subtly mix cultural values with their spiritual or moral foundations, simply because those cultural values seem successful.
Can you give me a concrete example of what that looks like in the real world?
Sure. Imagine a business leader who claims to deeply value honesty and integrity, core spiritual values. But they look around at their industry and they see that the Assyrians of their field, the competitors who are ruthless, who cut corners, who use deceptive marketing, are winning. They have the market share. They have all the power.
They are the Tiglath-Pilesers of the corporate world.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
the leader says, well, I have to survive. I have to remain relevant in this market. So they adopt those ruthless business practices, but they try to keep a thin veneer of their original values.
Right.
They bring the altar of Damascus right into their business model.
They blend the pursuit of success with their ethics, and eventually the ethics just get pushed off to the side, exactly like that bronze altar.
And they justify it by saying, I'm just being realistic. That is exactly what Ahaz would have said. I'm just being a realist about the military situation.
Wow.
But the source reminds us that this so-called realism was actually a profound lack of faith. He was copying what looked impressive in the culture around him rather than standing firm on what was actually true.
It's the danger of dilution. We don't usually reject the truth outright. We just dilute it with whatever is popular or powerful at the moment.
And notice the bitter irony of it all. Ahaz sought security above everything else. But by stripping the temple and offending God, he removed the only true protection he ever had.
Yeah.
The source material notes that in the later years, Judah suffered immensely. The security was a total illusion. The very nation he tried to appease, Assyria, eventually came back to haunt them and nearly destroyed them.
It really comes down to where you look when the pressure is on. That seems to be the core of this entire study. When the Arams and Israels of life are banging on your door, whether that is financial ruin, a health crisis, or intense social pressure, who do you call?
Right. Do you trust the quiet promise of the invisible God? Or do you reach for the phone to call the bully just because he has the chariots?
It's the choice between the waters of Shiloah that flowed gently, which is another great image from Isaiah, and the raging floodwaters of the river Euphrates. One sustains you, and the other completely overwhelms you.
And Ahaz chose the flood.
He really did. So let's bring this all together. We started with a king in a sheer panic.
We did. We saw how fear drove him to reject a divine promise and make a disastrous alliance with a foreign power.
That alliance then led to a false kind of piety, refusing the sign, pretending to be righteous while he was secretly making backroom deals.
And that eventually led to total religious compromise.
Yeah.
Syncretism. The importation of the altar of Damascus. The active replacement of the sacred with the successful.
It really is a stark warning about the trajectory of compromise. It never just stays in one lane. It eventually bleeds over and takes over the whole temple.
It does. It's a tragic legacy of compromise. He saved his throne for a few short years, but he lost his soul's independence in the process.
It's a lot to think about. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. It's something that isn't explicitly written in the text, but it's been bouncing around in my head as we talk about this whole Immanuel versus foreign king dynamic.
What's that?
If Ahaz replaced the altar simply because he was impressed by the culture of his conquerors, it forces us to ask ourselves a really hard question. Do we shape our values based on what we believe is true with a capital T? Or do we simply mimic whatever power seems to be winning at the moment? Are we building our lives on truth, or are we just copying the blueprints of whoever is currently on top?
That is the ultimate question. Are we followers of truth or just fans of power?
Thanks for diving in with us.
Until next time.